kind of how I view myself and why I view myself in a certain way. But to preface everything, I wanted to talk about a quick story. Back in November of 2022, my wife was in Pennsylvania, set to give birth to our son Marshall, and I was on deployment at this time. So while I was on an operation, communication was very difficult for her, but we were able to schedule a FaceTime so I could kind of, observe the process. Right about the time I was going to give her a call, we ended up getting in a engagement with the enemy, and I wasn't able to give her that call until the next day. And that next morning I found out that, I'd missed the birth of my son. And so while that was a huge failure at that point, I took that opportunity to kind of reflect and I did a lot of self-reflection for the days and the months past while I was on deployment, and tried to, change my perspective going back home, returning. And so what I wanted to talk about mainly is that there's always going to be opportunities, regardless if you fail or you succeed. There's things to learn from it, and you can benefit from just the reflection after that opportunity. And so, my perspective has changed now to somebody who's very self-driven and somebody who always strives for progress, but I wasn't always like that. So early on, I was very, just middle of the pack, being okay with a stagnant lifestyle, not making a lot of progress. And then all kind of changed when I was in my early 20s. I met my wife and I saw her parents, and I saw how hardworking they were, and how dedicated and driven they were. And I saw that impact on my wife and her siblings, and I was able to see how they were able to influence their own children. So as I returned home from deployment, I tried to take those role models and try to emulate them the best that I could. And I found a quote, and the quote says, day one or one day. And so it kind of talks about, you always say, one day I want to do X, and that's kind of wishful thinking. And so I looked at my own life, how I was living prior to that, and I did a lot of, one day, a lot of wishful thinking with no real plan in place. And so as I returned home, I had a lot of different jobs. So I was a husband again, I was a father for the first time, and I found that a lot of that work to be very rewarding, and there was a lot of fulfillment in doing all these different tasks. And so, going forward with that, I started using that one day or day one quote into other aspects of my life. And so, I joined the Marine Corps because I had dropped out of college as a junior. And for the 7 or 8 years that I was in the service, I would always kind of, go, one day I'm going to graduate, or one day I'll get that degree. And, as soon as I returned, I used that one day, and I said, this is going to be the day one of my college career again. And so I knocked out some classes real quick. And I'm happy to say now that I'm 5 classes away from receiving my degree. I also kind of used that one day or day one quote into another aspect, which is running. So I used to be a very casual runner, just running on weekends. And I used to say one day, I'm going to go on the podium and receive a medal and be very competitive at running. And I used that day one approach as I returned back. And I signed up for a race immediately. I put everything I had into 10 weeks prior to a race, running every day. Come race day, I ended up missing a turn. So I ended up not finishing the race. I didn't get a medal, and I wasn't qualified because I didn't even, finish that race. So while I took that as a failure initially, I went on to my second race. And in the second race, I finished, but I didn't medal. So I took both those failures, put it towards my third race, and I ended up finishing, and I made the podium. So I walked up with my son in my arms, and they put a medal on my child. So now we have that photograph, and one day I hope he's going to be curious enough to kind of ask, and he's going to say, what's this photo about? And it's going to be a story about how that photo expresses, a lot of determination and hard work and the benefits of that. So I just wanted to summarize with although there are many opportunities, you might fail or be successful, there's always something to gain from that. And the impact I had for my child was a big motivator in that new change of perspective that I have.